Northwood High. 1. After 3 years of being Sophia Chase's deskmate, I never once got a real thank you. Instead, when the results of the final practice SATs were posted, I saw her name at the top of the list. Rank 1. I wasn't even the top 10. Ethan, look at Sophia's score. Weren't you two always neck and neck? What happened on this one? My homeroom teacher, Mr. Davison, frowned at my score report, his voice thick with disappointment. I stared at that familiar silhouette across the hall, now surrounded by a crowd of students congratulating her, and a bitter taste filled my mouth. For 3 years, I had shared everything with her. Every problem-solving trick, every study method, even the notes I'd stayed up all night compiling. Every time she got stuck, I'd drop my own review to patiently walk her through it, sometimes late into the night. And now, she was standing in the spot that should have been mine, holding the score that should have been mine. Yo, Ethan, what's up? You look like you've seen a ghost. My friend Leo Gomez leaned over, holding a can of Coke. I just shook my head, unable to speak. What was there to say? I'd spent the last 3 years of my life building someone else's success, only to be left with nothing? After class, I worked up the nerve to walk over to Sophia. She was in a circle with a few other girls, discussing college applications. Sophia, I said. She turned, a flicker of annoyance in her eyes that was quickly masked by a polite smile. Ethan, hey, what's up? I wanted to talk to you. She glanced at her watch. I have to meet with my guidance counselor in a few minutes. Can it be quick? The other girls were looking at me, whispering among themselves. I took a deep breath. For the last 3 years, all those study guides I made for you, the problem sets. Her expression turned guarded. What are you trying to say? Nothing. I just wanted to know. Do you think they help you improve? Sophia stared at me for a second, then laughed. Ethan, you don't seriously think I got this score because of you, do you? I'm number 1 because I work my butt off, and because I'm smart enough to be. She paused as if for effect. Your notes were nice, I guess, but that's all they were. Real success comes from talent and hard work. Her words hit me like a bucket of ice water. I looked at her completely matter-of-fact expression, and the last shred of hope I had shattered. Right? So I guess the last 3 years were just a waste of my time. Ethan, what is that supposed to mean? You're making it sound like I owe you something, Sophia said, her brow furrowed. I never asked you to help me. You offered. The girls around her started chiming in. Seriously, just because Sophia did well, you're going to get all jealous? Yeah, acting like she couldn't have gotten number 1 without him. What a sore loser. I just stood there, feeling their judgmental stares from all sides, like I was the punchline to a joke. Forget it. Forget I said anything. I turned to leave, but Sophia's voice followed me. Ethan, you need to be a better sport about this. Isn't that what classmates are for? Helping each other out. What we're supposed to do. I let out a bitter laugh and walked faster. Back at my desk, I opened my backpack. Inside was the calculus problem set I'd finished organizing for her last night. It was full of handwritten notes on common mistakes and shortcuts. I had planned to give it to her today. Now I saw there was no point. Leo, seeing the look on my face, leaned over again. Dude, did you and the queen have a fight? The queen. I glanced over at Sophia, still holding court, laughing as she debated with her friends whether to apply to MIT or Stanford. Meanwhile, I was worried about getting into a decent state school. Leo, I asked, what's the most shameless thing a person can do? My out-of-the-blue question seemed to confuse him. Huh, what do you mean? Nothing. I'm going to go to the bathroom. The hallway was quiet, the only sound a distant murmur of voices from another classroom. I leaned against the wall, my mind flashing back to the first day of sophomore year. Sophia had been sitting in the back corner, a quiet girl with mediocre grades. I, on the other hand, was consistently in the top 3 of our year. Mr. Davison had said her foundations were weak and asked me, as a top student, to help her out. At the time, I thought helping a classmate get better was a noble thing to do. So, I started explaining problems to her, sharing my notes, even teaching her the unique methods I developed for myself. In the beginning, she was grateful. She'd always say thank you, sometimes even bringing me a bag of chips or a candy bar. I thought we were building a friendship, but thinking back, when had she ever treated me like a friend? I was just a tool she used on her path to success, a tool that could be tossed aside when it was no longer needed. Ethan, I looked up. It was Ms. Albright, my English teacher. Ms. Albright. I heard your latest practice scores weren't what you'd hoped for, she said, her tone gentle. Are you running into any trouble? I shook my head. No, just an off day, I guess. Well, with finals just around the corner, now's not the time to lose focus. You have a very strong academic foundation. As long as you apply yourself, you'll get into a top-tier university, no problem. A top-tier university? I glanced back into the classroom at the girl currently debating which Ivy League to grace with her application, and a wave of bitterness washed over me. Yeah, I used to be in that conversation, too. Now, I'd be lucky to get into a UC school. Ms. Albright, I said suddenly, if someone gives everything they have to help someone else and ends up with nothing, does that make them a fool? She looked at me, a little startled. Are you talking about something specific? I paused for a moment. No, just a thought. I should get back to class. Sitting back at my desk, I pulled out the calculus problem set. I flipped through the pages, each one filled with my neat handwriting. Every problem was carefully selected, every solution meticulously worked out. It had taken me 2 solid weeks to put it together. It was supposed to be my final gift to her before we graduated. Now, it was clear she didn't need it, or deserve it. I closed the notebook and shoved it deep into my backpack. Fine, I'd keep it for myself. It might be too late to turn things around, but it was better than continuing to be a doormat. During calculus class that afternoon, the teacher went over a particularly tough 3D geometry problem. I saw Sophia frowning, clearly lost. In the past, I would have immediately leaned over to whisper an explanation. This time, I just sat there focusing on the lecture. After the bell rang, Sophia, as expected, turned around. Ethan, did you get that last problem? Yeah, I said, not looking up from my textbook. Can you explain it to me? I got lost on the part about the spatial vectors. I finally looked up at her. In her eyes, which I had once found so captivating, I now saw nothing but entitled expectation. Sorry, I've got my own reviewing to do. You should ask someone else. Sophia was visibly stunned. What's wrong with you? Nothing's wrong. I've just decided I should probably spend more of my time on my own work. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Without another word, she turned back around. I went back to my book, but a strange feeling washed over me. Relief. It was that easy to say no. I didn't have to trade my own time for someone else's smile. I could, for once, just be unapologetically focused on myself. That evening, during the last study hall, I started mapping out a new review plan. There was less than a month until finals. It was a tight schedule, but it wasn't impossible. I pulled out all the materials I had made for Sophia over the past 3 years and began repurposing them for my own final push. This was my work, my knowledge. It was time it started working for me. The next morning, I got to school half an hour early. Only a few students were in the classroom, their quiet murmurs the only sound in the room. I sat down and pulled out the study guides I had reorganized the night before. Looking at the dense, detailed notes, I was struck by just how much knowledge I had accumulated over 3 years. If I hadn't been playing free tutor for Sophia this whole time, my grades would have never slipped this far. Ethan, you're here early. I looked up to see Mark Evans, our class president. Yeah, wanted to get some extra review in. I heard you've been in a slump lately, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. Can't let up now, man. Finals are right around the corner. If you need anything, let me know. I nodded, not saying much more. Students started to trickle in, Sophia among them. She slowed down as she passed my desk, looking like she wanted to say something, but she kept walking. I pretended not to notice and kept my eyes on my book. First period was calculus. Our teacher wanted to go over the practice problems from yesterday. Who wants to solve number 3 on the board? He asked, scanning the room. Sophia half raised her hand, then put it down. I knew she couldn't solve it. In the past, I would have already slipped her a note with the solution. But now, Ethan, how about you give it a shot? The teacher called out. I stood up and walked to the whiteboard. It was a complex analytic geometry problem, the kind that required several of the special techniques I perfected. I wrote out the steps, my hand moving with practiced ease. Excellent. A very elegant solution, Ethan. Everyone, pay attention to his second step, the way he transformed the equation. The teacher began breaking down my method for the class. As I returned to my seat, I felt a surge of accomplishment I hadn't felt in a long time. It was amazing how good it felt to focus on my own success. After class, several students came over to my desk. Dude, that was brilliant. Can you show me how you did that conversion? Ethan, do you have any more practice problems like that one? I explained my method patiently, feeling a genuine sense of satisfaction. It was nice to be needed, as long as I was helping people who actually appreciated it. Ethan, it was Sophia, that problem from before. What about it? I asked calmly. Could you explain it to me again, privately? There's still a few parts one don't get. I looked at her expectant face and felt nothing. Sorry, I'm on my way to ask the teacher about something else. You can ask one of the other guys. Her face hardened. Ethan, what is your problem? I don't have a problem. I've just realized my time is valuable, and I don't want to waste it on things that aren't worth it. The words were harsher than I intended. Sophia's eyes welled up. The students nearby started whispering. Isn't Ethan being a little harsh? Sophia looks like she's about to cry. Yeah, I thought they were friends. I ignored them, packed my bag, and started to head for the teacher's office. Ethan, wait. Sophia grabbed my arm. I know you're in a bad mood, but we're desk mates. We're supposed to help each other. I stopped and looked her dead in the eye. Sophia, let me ask you something. In the last 3 years, how many times have I helped you? She blinked. How could I possibly remember? Then tell me this. How many times have you helped me? She just stared, speechless. Of course she had no answer. She had never helped me. Not once. It was always me giving and her taking. Forget it. It doesn't matter anymore, I said, gently pulling my arm away. From now on, we study on our own. I walked out of the classroom and took a long, deep breath. In the faculty office, my calculus teacher was grading papers. Mr. Jensen, I have a few questions for you. Ethan, have a seat. He put down his red pen. Your focus seems a little off lately. Is something bothering you? I hesitated. Sir, if someone spends all their time helping someone else and their own grades start to slip, what should they do? He thought for a moment. Helping a classmate is a good thing, but not if it gets in the way of your own studies. At the end of the day, your future is your own responsibility. You're right. Ethan, with your abilities, if you go all in for this last month, you've still got a great shot at a top-tier university. Don't give up. I understand. Thank you, sir. Walking out of his office, my mind felt clearer than it had in years. He was right. My future was my responsibility. Why was I sacrificing it for someone else's? In English class that afternoon, we got a new practice essay prompt. As I wrote, I felt a renewed sense of focus I hadn't had in ages. I realized my skills hadn't eroded as much as I'd feared. If I could just get my head back in the game, I still had a chance. That night, I drew up a detailed study schedule. English, focus on essay structure and critical reading. Calculus, back to basics, master all core problem types. Physics, run practice sets and identify patterns. History, review key themes and source analysis. Every subject had a clear timeline and a tangible goal. Looking at the packed schedule, I felt a familiar sense of purpose. This was how my life was supposed to be. Dude, this schedule is insane, Leo said, peering over my shoulder. You think you can stick to it? I'm going to try, I said, closing my notebook. Leo, do you think someone should give up on their own dream for someone else? He scratched his head. That's a heavy question, man. I don't know. But I guess at the end of the day, you got to look out for number one. You're right. Just before the final bell, Sophia walked over to my desk again. Ethan, I wanted to apologize, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I know you've helped me a lot over the last 3 years, and I should have thanked you. I looked up at her. The apology felt hollow, rehearsed. It wasn't genuine remorse. It was the panic of someone who had just lost her biggest asset. You don't have to apologize. We were never obligated to help each other, I said flatly. Let's just focus on ourselves from now on. Sophia bit her lip. So, are we still friends? Friends? I almost laughed out loud. Would a friend use you like a free tutor? Would a friend take everything you gave without ever giving anything back? Would a friend see your grades slipping and still demand more of your time? Sophia, we were never friends, I said, looking her straight in the eye. You saw me as a tool, a useful tool, and now that this tool isn't working for you anymore, you're panicking. The color drained from her face. How can you say that? Because it's the truth, I said, standing up and grabbing my backpack. Starting tomorrow, I'm asking to have my seat changed. It'll be better for both of us. I walked out without looking back. Behind me, I could hear a muffled sob, but I didn't stop. This time, I wasn't going to be swayed. This time, I was living for myself. 3. The next morning, I went to Mr. Davison to request a seat change. Ethan, Why the sudden request? I thought you and Sophia always got along well, he asked, looking puzzled. I think the location is affecting my ability to focus, sir. I'd like to move somewhere quieter. Mr. Davison scanned the seating chart. All right, you could take the empty desk in the back row by the window. It's quiet over there. Thank you. As I packed my things, Sophia sat silently, watching my every move. I could feel her eyes on me, but I refused to look at her. My new desk was in the corner of the classroom. It was quiet, just as I'd hoped. It also gave me a clear view of the entire room without being easily distracted. First period was American history. The teacher was breaking down essay writing techniques for the final exam. I took detailed notes, feeling more focused than I had in years. Without Sophia's constant interruptions, my efficiency skyrocketed. At the end of class, Leo jogged over. Dude, you actually did it. You moved. Sophia looks wrecked. I glanced toward the front of the room. Sophia was slumped over her desk, her shoulders shaking slightly. That's her problem, I said, turning back to my book. Leo, do you think I'm being cold? He thought for a moment. I think you're being smart. The way you treated her before. It was a little much, man. Almost obsessive. Obsessive. Yeah, you guys weren't dating, but you acted like her boyfriend, always taking care of her. Honestly, a lot of kids were talking about it behind her back. I froze. What were they saying? Some people thought you were trying to get with her. Others said she was totally using you. It was all over the place. So that's how it was. I thought I was just being a helpful friend, but I had become a piece of high school gossip. What did you think? I asked. Leo shrugged. I thought you were just a good guy who was too nice for his own good. You were being played, and you didn't even see it. Being played. The phrase stung, but it was accurate. For 3 years, I had been Sophia's secret weapon, the gun she used to shoot down any academic challenge that came her way. And when she was done, I was put away until she needed me again. Well, it's good you finally figured it out, Leo said, patting my shoulder. Keep it up, man. I'm rooting for you. Over the next few days, I dove headfirst into my studies. Without my side mission, my routine became incredibly disciplined. I was up at 6, in bed by 11, and every hour in between was dedicated to studying. Calculus, physics, chemistry, the subjects that had started to feel overwhelming now became clear again as I systematically reviewed my own notes. My foundation was stronger than I had realized. I had just spent too much time patching someone else's leaks and had neglected my own ship. On Friday, we had a pop quiz in calculus. I got the second highest score in the class. When I saw the grade, I couldn't believe it. I hadn't scored that well in over a year. Ethan, great work on this, my teacher, Mr. Jensen, said, clearly pleased. Looks like you found your focus again. Yes, sir. Keep this up. With scores like these, you're on track for a top-tier university. A top-tier university. I glanced at the quiz leaderboard. Mark Evans was number 1. Sophia was 5th. After school, as I was packing my bag, Sophia approached my desk. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes. Ethan, congratulations on the quiz, she said quietly. Thanks, I replied without looking up. I didn't do so well. She paused. That derivative problem, I still don't really get it. I knew where this was going, but I played dumb. Oh, really? You should ask Mr. Jensen for help. Sophia bit her lip. Ethan, I know I messed up, but we're still classmates. Can't you just help me one more time? I stopped packing and looked up at her. Her eyes were filled with the same desperate hope I'd seen 100 times before. But this time, it didn't stir a thing in me. Sophia, let me ask you a question. You see my bait down? If my grades were tanking right now, and yours were great, and I came to you for help, would you do it? She flinched. You wouldn't, would you? I said with a humorless smile. Because in your mind, I'm just a tool. And when a tool breaks, you don't help it. You just get frustrated that it's not working. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant, I said, standing up and slinging my backpack over my shoulder. Sophia, I don't owe you anything. Helping you before was my mistake. Not helping you now is me finally learning from it. I walked toward the door. Ethan, she called after me. Are you really going to be this cruel? I stopped, but didn't turn around. Cruel? After 3 years, were you ever once moved by anything I did for you? When you were accepting my help, did it ever cross your mind that I needed to study too? If it had, you wouldn't have kept asking for more, even when you saw my own grades dropping. I pushed the classroom door open. Sophia, you're not dumb. You're just used to leaning on other people. It's time you learn to stand on your own. As I walked away, I heard a faint sob from the classroom behind me. This time, I didn't feel a shred of pity. Some paths you have to walk alone. Some lessons you have to learn the hard way. I was not her crutch, and I certainly wasn't her savior. I was just Ethan, a normal kid trying to fight for his own future. When I got home that night, my mom was thrilled with my quiz score. "Ethan, this is wonderful. I'm making your favorite lasagna to celebrate." "Thanks, Mom. By the way, how's that friend of yours, Sophia? I remember her grades were always so good." I hesitated. "She's fine, I guess. We don't talk much anymore." "Oh, that makes sense. Everyone's busy with finals coming up," she said, thinking nothing of it. "You both need to keep up the hard work." At dinner, my dad asked, "Son, are you feeling confident about getting into the university you want?" "I am," I nodded. "Dad, when do you think a person is most likely to succeed?" My dad considered it. "Probably when they're giving it their all, fighting for themselves." Giving it their all, fighting for themselves. He was absolutely right. For the first time in years, I finally understood what that felt like. No extra burdens, no unnecessary distractions. All my time and energy were my own. The feeling was incredible. Later that night, while studying, I came across the detailed problem set I had originally made for Sophia. It turned out to be even more useful for me. Every problem was a classic example, and every solution was the most efficient method I could devise. If I hadn't been making it for someone else, I never would have been so thorough. Now, it was my ultimate weapon for the finals. Sometimes, the best gifts are the ones you end up giving to yourself. After finishing the last problem, I stretched. Tomorrow was a new day, a day without Sophia's interruptions, a day that belonged completely to me. And it felt good. For during homeroom on Monday, Mr. Davison made an announcement. "All right, everyone, we have 3 weeks until final exams. To prepare, the district is holding one last comprehensive mock exam. Your scores on this will be a major factor in your final GPA and college recommendation letters." A nervous buzz filled the room. I remained calm. The past few weeks of intense, focused studying had rebuilt my confidence. "You nervous?" Leo asked, leaning over. "Not really. I'll just do my best. I heard this one's going to be extra tough, since it's the last one." "Bring it on," I said with a small smile. "You shouldn't stress either, Leo. Just perform at your usual level." After class, I saw Sophia, surrounded by a few other girls. "Sophia, you seemed really off lately. What are you going to do about the mock exam?" one of them asked. "Yeah, if you bomb this one, it could kill your college applications." Sophia looked pale. I'll just have to try harder." "Why don't you ask Ethan for help? His grades have shot up recently. He must have some kind of secret." At the mention of my name, Sophia's head snapped in my direction. Our eyes met for a brief second. Hers were a complex storm of desperation and resentment. I held her gaze for a moment, then coolly looked away. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. Some relationships, once broken, can't be fixed. I was no longer the Ethan who would soften at a single glance from her. The next few days were a blur of intense, final push studying. For calculus, I reviewed every problem I had ever gotten wrong in the last 3 years, building a complete system for tackling any question. I did the same for physics and chemistry, reinforcing every concept. The biggest surprise was English. With focused practice, my essay writing had dramatically improved. Ms. Albright said my analysis had developed a unique voice, free from the formulaic structures I used to rely on. "Ethan, this essay has real depth," she said, holding up my latest paper. "This paragraph here, about the nature of growth, is genuinely philosophical." I looked at the words I had written. True growth isn't about learning to please everyone. It's about learning to take responsibility for your own choices. Sometimes, saying no takes more courage than saying yes. It was the truest thing I had felt in a long time. The old me had been a people pleaser, always saying yes, especially to Sophia. I understood now that kindness without boundaries isn't a virtue, it's a weakness. The night before the mock exam, I went to bed early. As I lay in the dark, I thought about my freshman self, so full of excitement and optimism. I thought helping people was the most important thing. I thought hard work and sincerity would always be rewarded. I was so naive, but I didn't regret it. That experience, painful as it was, taught me what truly matters. The final exams were the first real battle of my life that was entirely my own. No one could fight it for me, and no one would share in the victory. I had to give it everything I had. I had to fight for myself. The next morning, the mock exam began. The first section was English literature. The moment I saw the paper, I knew it was going to be tough. The reading comprehension passages were dense, and the essay prompt was a challenge. Discuss the concept of choice as a defining element of the human experience. Write an essay of no fewer than 800 words. Seeing the topic, I couldn't help but smile. It felt like it was written just for me. I picked up my pen. Life is the sum of our choices. Every decision, big or small, shapes the person we become. The most difficult choices are not between good and bad, but between good and better. The words flowed effortlessly. I poured all of my recent epiphanies onto the page. It was probably the best essay I had written in my entire high school career. The calculus exam was just as challenging, but I found that most of the hard problems fell within the scope of my review. The meticulously organized problem set I'd made became my secret weapon. I recognized the patterns and quickly found the solutions. The science section was a marathon, testing a huge range of knowledge under tight time constraints. But I managed my time perfectly, leaving enough for each subject. Several of the physics problems, in particular, covered topics I had just reviewed. The final day's history exam felt like a cool-down lap. The essay prompt was to write a persuasive letter on the topic, how to balance academics with helping others. I chose to argue from a specific angle. Helping others is a virtue, but we must first ensure we are in a position to offer that help. We can only truly lift others up once we are standing on solid ground ourselves. It was the most profound lesson I had learned. After 3 grueling days, it was over. I felt a sense of lightness I had never experienced after an exam. It was the first time I had competed solely for myself, with no other weight on my shoulders. "Ethan, how'd it go?" Leo asked, walking over. "Pretty good, I think. Better than last time. I knew you'd kill it. You've been in the zone for weeks." He was right. I had never felt so focused, confident, and ready for a fight. This was the feeling of someone fighting for himself. As I was leaving the exam hall, I saw Sophia standing in the corridor, her face ashen. She saw me, opened her mouth as if to speak, but said nothing. I didn't stop. I just walked right past her. Some people are just chapters in your life, not the whole story. Some experiences are just lessons, not life sentences. It was time for me to move forward. 5 the day the mock exam scores were posted, the entire senior class was buzzing. I was ranked first in our class and third in the entire school. I got a perfect score in calculus, lost only 5 points in the science section, and my English score was my highest ever, a 132, putting me in the top percentile. "Ethan, you're a beast," Leo shouted, practically jumping up and down. "Third in the school. With that score, you could get into MIT or Stanford, easy." Classmates crowded around to congratulate me. I thanked them politely, but my eyes drifted to Sophia. She was sitting at her desk, motionless, her face pale. She had ranked 15th in our class and had fallen out of the top 100 in the school. With that score, a top-tier university was out of the question. Even a good state school would be a reach. "Ethan, congratulations," Mr. Davison said, beaming as he walked over. "An absolutely outstanding performance. Do you know where you're thinking of applying?" "MIT, sir. For computer science." "Excellent choice. With this score, you have the credentials to back it up," he said, patting my shoulder. "Keep this momentum, and you'll do even better on the real finals." MIT, it had been my dream since I was a kid, the goal I'd been working toward for 3 years. Now, it was finally within reach. After class, Mr. Jensen, my calculus teacher, called me to his office. "Ethan, your score on the math section was phenomenal," he said, holding my exam paper. "Your solutions for the last 2 problems were particularly ingenious." "Thank you, sir. I have to ask, how did you manage such a dramatic improvement in such a short time?" I consider the question. I mostly adjusted my study habits. I became much more focused on my own weak spots. "Could you be more specific? Your methods might help other students." I explained my review process in detail, and he listened intently. "A very sound strategy," he nodded. "It seems focus and efficiency were the keys." Focus. That was it. My biggest change was learning to be relentlessly focused on my own goals, my own work, and tuning out the rest. When I got back to the classroom, Sophia's desk was empty. She ran out crying a few minutes ago, Leo told me. Probably because of her score. I nodded but said nothing. Everyone has to face the consequences of their choices. Sophia was no exception. She had chosen the easy path of dependence, and now she was paying the price. Late that afternoon, she returned. Her eyes were red and swollen. She sat down and stared blankly at her score report for a long time before finally standing up and walking toward me. Ethan, can we talk? She asked softly. I looked up, my expression unreadable. What is it? I know I did badly on this exam, she said, biting her lip. I was wondering if you could. You want my help? I finished for her. She nodded, her eyes full of the same desperate hope as always. Ethan, I know I was awful before, but this is my last chance. If I mess up the finals, my life is over. I looked at her and remembered the quiet, struggling girl I'd met 3 years ago. She had looked at me with that same pitiful expression, and I had caved. What followed was 3 years of thankless work, of her taking everything for granted. Now, she was trying the same tactic again, but I wasn't the same person. Sophia, let me ask you something, I said, putting down my pen. If I was the one with the bad score right now, and I needed your help, would you give it? She hesitated. Yes, I would. Really? I gave a small, humorless laugh. Then let me ask you this. In the last 3 years, when did I ever ask you for help? And how many times did you offer it? She was speechless. The answer is 0, I said for her, because in your world, I was a tool, and tools don't need help. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant, I said, standing up. Sophia, I'm not that naive kid from sophomore year anymore. I'm not going to throw away my principles just because you're crying. But we're classmates. Classmates. I shot back. A class or relationship is supposed to be about mutual support, not one-sided charity. Would you call what we have mutual? Her face grew paler. Ethan, don't you care about our history at all? Our history. I almost laughed. What history is that? The history of me giving everything and you taking everything? The rest of the class was watching us, whispering. But I didn't care anymore. Some things needed to be said out loud. Some lines needed to be drawn in permanent ink. Sophia, I'm going to tell you this one last time, I said, looking her straight in the eye. I don't owe you anything, and you don't owe me anything. From now on, we are both responsible for our own lives. I grabbed my backpack and started to leave. Ethan, she yelled after me, how does this make you any different from all the other selfish people out there? I stopped and turned back. The difference is that I've learned to protect myself. I used to be too kind, so kind that I was a fool. Now I understand that kindness without principles isn't a virtue. It's a form of self-destruction. You've changed, Ethan. I don't even know who you are anymore. You're right, I have. I nodded. I've become smarter, more mature, and more focused on what matters. That's not a bad thing. It's called growing up. I walked out of the classroom without looking back. Walking home, I felt lighter than I had in years. I had finally, completely broken free from a past that had been dragging me down. I could finally live for myself. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom. Ethan, your teacher called to tell us about your amazing score. We are so proud of you. Reading it, my eyes started to sting. These were the people who mattered. The ones who celebrated my success, not just what they could get from me. When I got home, my parents had prepared a feast. A celebration for our valedictorian, my mom said, her smile wider than I'd seen it in a long time. Mom, Dad, thank you for always supporting me, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Don't be silly. That's our job, my dad said, clapping me on the shoulder. Keep working hard. You're almost at the finish line. Over dinner, I told him a little about what had been going on. You did the right thing, Ethan, my mom said after I finished. It's good to help people, but not without limits, and never at the expense of your own future. Exactly, my dad agreed. The finals are your battle to fight. You can't let someone else's problems derail you. Hearing their support solidified my resolve. There were less than 3 weeks until the final exams. For these 3 weeks, I would give it everything I had. MIT, here I come. 6 with 2 weeks left until finals. The school went into overdrive. Everyone was cramming, and the air in the classrooms was thick with tension. My own study rhythm was steady. I followed my plan, patching up weak spots in each subject. Day by day, I felt my confidence growing. Dude, you don't seem nervous at all, Leo said, munching on a protein bar. What's the point of being nervous? I replied, not looking up from a physics problem. I've reviewed what I need to review. Now it's just about maintaining my form. True. Your mindset is seriously solid. Mindset was everything. I used to worry about everything, constantly second-guessing myself. Now I understood. Focus on the present, on what you can control. Everything else is just noise. During calculus, Mr. Jensen was covering the last few key theorems. I listened intently, jotting down notes. Suddenly, I heard a soft sob from behind me. I glanced back. It was Sophia. She had her head down on her desk, her shoulders trembling. The students around her looked on with concern. Sophia, what's wrong? Her new desk mate whispered. Sophia lifted her head, her eyes puffy and red. I was trying to do that last problem, and I can't. I glanced at the problem on the board. It was a standard application of derivatives. I had explained similar problems to her dozens of times. Clearly, she had never truly learned how to solve them herself. It's okay, you still have time, her desk mate said, trying to comfort her. But I knew the truth. 2 weeks wasn't enough time to make up for 3 years of coasting. Sophia was finally paying the bill for her own laziness. I turned back around and focused on the lecture. Her tears no longer affected me. Her pain was not my responsibility. After class, Mr. Jensen caught me on my way out. Ethan, can you come to my office for a moment? In his office, he got straight to the point. It's about Sophia Chase. Her performance has dropped dramatically, and her emotional state is deteriorating. I was hoping you could help her. I froze. Help her how, sir? You two used to be close, and your own grades are excellent now. If you could just guide her a little, it might be enough to salvage her final score. I was silent for a moment. Sir, with all due respect, there are only 2 weeks until the finals. A significant improvement at this stage is unlikely. I know it's a long shot, but we have to try. You're classmates. You should be helping each other. There was again that same tired phrase. I took a deep breath. Sir, may I ask you a question? Go ahead. If I were the one failing right now, and Sophia was at the top of the class, would you be asking her to help me? He hesitated. Well, of course I would. Really? I looked him in the eye. Then why, for the past year when my own grades were slipping, did no one ever ask her to help me? Mr. Jensen was speechless. Sir, I don't think you have the full picture, I continued. For the last 3 years, Sophia's academic success was largely built on my help. I gave her all my notes, my study guides, my methods. I sacrificed my own study time to tutor her. But your grades have recovered now, haven't they? Yes, I said calmly. They recovered after I stopped helping her. Sir, I'm not a cruel person, but I'm not a pushover either. Helping a classmate is one thing, but not at the cost of my own future. The teacher was silent for a long time. So what are you saying? I'm saying that this is the most critical period before the exams, and I need to focus all of my energy on myself, I said, standing up. I know you mean well, but this is a path she has to walk on her own. Isn't that a bit selfish, Ethan? Selfish? I offered a small, humorless smile. Sir, if fighting for your own future is selfish, then 99% of the people in this world are selfish. I gave him a respectful nod. I have to get back to class, sir. Walking out of the office, I felt a knot of conflicting emotions. I understood his position. He was just trying to help a struggling student. But I couldn't betray myself to meet someone else's expectations. I had given 3 years. Now it was my time. Back in the classroom, Sophia's seat was empty again. Leo told me she'd had another breakdown over a math problem and ran out. I just nodded and sat down, pulling out my English vocabulary list. Focus. Efficiency. That was my mantra. Nothing else could get in. Sophia returned near the end of the day, her eyes even more swollen than before. She sat listlessly, staring at her textbook without reading a single word. As the final bell approached, she made her way to my desk one last time. Ethan, I'm begging you. Just this once, she whispered. I know I was wrong, but this is it. This is my last chance. I looked up at her, my heart a calm, steady sea. Sophia, I've already given you my answer. I can't help you. Why? Aren't we classmates? Classmates. I closed my book. Funny how you only remember that when you need something. For For the past 3 years, did you ever once treat me like a classmate? I. You didn't. I cut her off. To you, I was a tool, something to be used. And now that your tool has decided it's done being used, you're panicking. The whole class was watching, but I didn't care. Sophia, I'm telling you this the last time, I said, standing up. People have to take responsibility for their choices. You chose to be dependent, to get by on someone else's work. Now you have to face the consequences. You're so cold, she said, her eyes flashing with anger. Cold, I laughed. And what would you call your behavior for the last 3 years? Taking my help for granted, never saying thank you, never acknowledging my contribution to your success. What's that called if not cold? She had no answer. Besides, I went on, even if I helped you now, what could you possibly learn in 2 weeks? You think you can cram 3 years of knowledge and suddenly ace the finals? You have to at least try, she stammered, her voice breaking. Try. I shook my head. Sophia, do you have any idea what my life was like for 3 years? I'd tutor you until 11 at night, then go home and study until 1 in the morning for my own classes. How much of my own life did I sacrifice for you? I know it was hard, but... No buts. I interrupted. You knew it was hard, but you never cared. You knew I was giving everything, but you were never grateful. And now that you're desperate, you suddenly remember I exist. The classroom was silent. Sophia, there's a saying. A wise man doesn't stand under a crumbling wall, I said, grabbing my backpack. I'm done being the fool holding up your wall for you. I walked to the door. Ethan, she screamed after me. You're going to regret this. I didn't turn back. No, the only thing I regret is how foolish I was before. I walked out of school and took a deep, cleansing breath. It was finally completely over. For the first time in 3 years, I felt truly free. No burdens, no pressure, no guilt. I was finally ready to fight for myself. 7, the final week before exams. School let out for a study break. I stuck to a disciplined schedule. Wake at 7, sleep at 10:30. No more all-nighters, no more last-minute cramming. Just steady, methodical review. Ethan, should we sign you up for one of those last-minute boot camps? My mom asked. No, Mom. At this stage, maintaining my mental state is more important than learning anything new. Are you confident? I put down my book. Mom, do you remember what I used to say I wanted to be when I grew up? Of course. You wanted to go to MIT and become someone who makes a difference. Well, I said seriously, that dream is just one step away. And yes, I'm confident I can make it happen. A look of pride washed over her face. I believe in you. You've always been a determined kid. And I was. Even while I was wasting so much time on Sophia, I never truly gave up on my own goals. Now, with all the dead weight gone, my resolve was stronger than ever. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. Hello, is this Ethan? This is Sophia's mother. I was taken aback. Hello, Mrs. Chase. Ethan, I need to talk to you about Sophia. Mrs. Chase, I know you two may have had a misunderstanding, but Sophia is not doing well. She's been crying for days. She's given up on studying completely. I stayed silent. Ma'am, the situation. Ethan, I'm begging you. Please, just help her. She's always been a very dependent child. Now that she doesn't have anyone helping her, she can't handle the pressure. A surge of anger shot through me. A very dependent child? That was the root of the entire problem. Mrs. Chase, with all due respect, being dependent isn't something to be proud of. I know, but the finals are just days away. We can't just stand by and watch her throw her life away, can we? Mrs. Chase, Sophia isn't a child anymore. She's 18, an adult. She needs to be responsible for her own actions. Ethan, how can you be so cold-hearted? You two used to be such good friends. Ma'am, I cut her off. Please don't use the word cold-hearted to describe me. For 3 years, I helped your daughter and asked for nothing in return. Is that cold-hearted? The other end of the line went silent. And you say we were good friends. I pressed on. When did Sophia ever treat me like a friend? Did she ever care about my feelings? Was she ever grateful for my help? Well, Mrs. Chase, I'll say this one last time. I don't know Sophia anything. We are each responsible for our own lives. I ended the call. A moment later, my phone rang again. It was Sophia. I turned the phone off. Some people just don't get it. They think if they act pitiful enough, they can guilt anyone into doing what they want. They don't understand that real growth comes from standing on your own, not from leaning on someone else. That evening, I went for a run in the nearby park to clear my head. It had become a habit, a way to stay sharp. While I was jogging, I ran into Mark Evans, the student who had taken the #1 spot in the mock exams. "Ethan, hey," he called out, jogging up beside me. "Getting a run in?" "Yeah, just trying to stay balanced." "Your progress lately has been insane, man. I'm actually worried you're going to pass me on the finals," he said with a grin. "Let's just wish each other luck. Hope we both get the scores we want." "Hey," Mark said, his tone shifting slightly. "Are things okay between you and Sophia? I heard some stuff from other people." "It's nothing. We're just focusing on our own studies," I said, not wanting to get into it. "Oh, good. To be honest, man, you seem a lot better now than you used to." "What do you mean? You always seem so stressed out, so tired. Now you look relaxed, focused." His words made me think. He was right. The old me was constantly exhausted. Busy tutoring Sophia, busy making her study guides, busy managing her academic anxieties. I was so tired, I never had the energy to check in on myself. "Mark, when do you think a person is most likely to succeed?" "When they're focused, I guess," he said after a moment. "When you can lock in on a goal and tune everything else out, success isn't far behind." Focused. There was that word again. It was the most important lesson I had learned. When I got home, my mom was in the kitchen. "Mom, what are you making?" "Chicken soup. You need to be well fed for your exams." Watching her, I felt a wave of warmth. This is what real support looked like. They didn't get angry when I said no. They didn't call me cold for setting boundaries. They just quietly cheer me on. "Thanks, Mom." "Of course, honey," she smiled. "By the way, some girl called the house phone for you earlier. I told her you were out for a run." "Okay, I know who it was." I didn't elaborate. Some people never learn when to stop. But it didn't matter anymore. The finals were just days away, and nothing was going to break my focus. That night, I organized all my notes from the last 3 years one final time. Looking at the massive stacks of paper, I remembered my original dream. Freshman year, I was going to get into the best university, learn from the best minds, and do something that mattered. That dream had never changed. I'd taken a long detour, but I was back on the right path. Now, more than ever, I was determined to see it through. I have to get into MIT, not to prove anyone wrong, not for revenge, but for the dream I've held on to for 18 years. My dream. The first day of final exams arrived. I woke up naturally at 5:30, not with anxiety, but with a profound sense of calm. After getting ready, I sat at my desk and looked at the note I'd written for myself. Today, I fight for the dream I've had for 18 years. "Ethan, breakfast is ready," my mom called softly from the kitchen. The table was set with my favorite, scrambled eggs, bacon, and toast. "No pressure. Just do your best," my dad said, patting my shoulder. "I will," I said calmly. "Mom, Dad, thank you for everything." "Don't be silly, sweetie," my mom said, her eyes a little misty. "Now go. You've got this." As I walked out the door, I took one last look back at my home, the place that had given me 18 years of unconditional love and support. Today, I would repay them with the best performance of my life. The testing center was already crowded with students. I saw Sophia in a corner, looking pale and nervous. Our eyes met for a fleeting second before I looked away. "Ethan," Leo jogged over. "How you feeling?" "Good. You?" "A little shaky, but seeing you so calm is actually helping." "Just do what you practiced. We're prepared for this." Inside the exam room, I found my assigned seat. As the proctor read the rules, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. 3 years of work came down to this. First up was English literature. I scanned the exam booklet. The questions were challenging, but fair. Nothing I hadn't seen before. I moved through the sections at a steady pace. Poetry analysis, prose interpretation, critical reading. Then came the essay prompt. On the topic of independence, write a persuasive essay of no fewer than 800 words. I couldn't help but smile. It was perfect. I picked up my pen. Independence is the most critical virtue a person can cultivate. True independence is not merely about self-sufficiency in life, but about intellectual and spiritual self-reliance. I poured all my recent experiences onto the page. My thoughts on dependence versus independence, on giving versus taking, on growth and choice. It was the most honest thing I had ever written. I finished with 10 minutes to spare, reviewed my answers, and turned in my paper. Walking out of the exam room, I felt great. A strong start. During the lunch break, I avoided discussing the exam with anyone. It only creates unnecessary anxiety. I went home, ate a light meal, and took a short nap. The afternoon session was calculus, my strongest subject. The problems were difficult, designed to separate the good students from the great ones. But they were all within my capabilities. The final two questions, in particular, played directly to my strengths. The problem set I'd made for Sophia and reclaimed for myself had prepared me perfectly. I recognized the patterns instantly. After finishing, I double-checked every answer. I was confident I was close to a perfect score. At the end of the first day, I felt fantastic. On the way home, a few classmates caught up with me. "Ethan, how did you solve that last calculus problem?" one asked. "I used a parametric equation," I said simply. "Wow, I never would have thought of that." "You're going to kill it this year," Mark Evans said, walking beside me. "You're in the zone. We'll all do great," I replied with a smile. When I got home, my parents were waiting anxiously. "How did it go?" "It went well. I think I did my best," I told them, trying to temper my own excitement. "That's all we can ask for. Get some rest for tomorrow." That night, I fell asleep easily. I thought of my younger self, so full of hopes and fears about this moment. Now, there was no fear, only anticipation. I knew I was ready. The detours and hardships of the last 3 years had forged me into someone stronger, someone who was focused, who was fighting for himself. Tomorrow was the science portion, and I was ready for it. Mitt was waiting. Day 2 of the finals, the comprehensive science exam. I maintained the same calm focus from the day before. The science section was a marathon, a test of knowledge, speed, and strategy. I stuck to my game plan. Chemistry first, then physics, and finally biology. The chemistry section was straightforward. The physics problems were complex, involving several tough calculations, but I worked through them methodically. All the concepts that used to give me trouble, mechanics, electromagnetism, now felt clear. The biology portion, a test of memory and comprehension, had always been a strength. I finished the entire exam with 20 minutes to spare, which I used to meticulously review my answers. I felt great about my performance. Walking out of the testing hall, I saw the strained faces of my classmates. That last physics problem was impossible. I completely blanked on the biology essay. I didn't join the postmortem. I just walked quietly toward the school gate. I saw Sophia there. She looked utterly defeated. Our eyes met again, and hers were a swirling mix of regret, anger, and despair. I held her gaze for a moment, then walked on. A choice, once made, has consequences. She chose dependence. I chose independence. Now, we were both living with the results. The afternoon exam was history, the last test of my high school career. It felt like a victory lap. The multiple choice questions were easy, the document analysis straightforward. The final essay prompt felt like a gift from the universe. Write a persuasive letter to an incoming freshman on the topic of how to cultivate independence in high school. I wrote with passion, channeling everything I had learned. The path to independence begins with refusing to be overly dependent on others. Many students fall into the habit of relying on their peers for help, but true growth comes from confronting challenges on your own. When the final bell rang, I put down my pen and let out a long, slow breath. It was over. 3 years of high school, 12 years of schooling, all culminating in this moment. Walking out of the testing center for the last time, I felt an incredible sense of peace. Not just relief, but the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had given it my absolute all. Whatever the result, I had no regrets. "Ethan, we're done," Leo yelled, running over and throwing an arm around my shoulder. "How'd it go?" "Great. You?" "Pretty good. A few questions were tough, but I think I did okay overall." We walked out of the school gates together, where a crowd of anxious parents was waiting. My mom rushed over immediately. "Ethan, you're done. How are you feeling?" "I'm feeling good, Mom. I think I gave it my best shot." "That's wonderful, honey," she said, her eyes welling up with tears. "Let's go home. I'll make you a special dinner." On the car ride home, I stared out at the familiar streets, a swirl of emotions inside me. The last 3 years had been a journey, from naive kindness to confused frustration, and finally to a hard-won sense of self. I had learned so much, lost a little, but most importantly, I had found myself. That night, we had a celebratory family dinner. "So what's the plan now?" my dad asked. "Wait for the scores. If they're what I hope they are, I'm applying to MIT's computer science program." "Good. I support you 100%. "Oh," my mom said suddenly. "That girl, Sophia. Her mother called me again today." I paused. "What did she say?" "Just that Sophia didn't do well, that she's very worried. And she asked how you did." I was quiet for a moment. "Mom, if she calls again, you don't have to pick up." "Why? Aren't you classmates?" "Mom, some people only remember you exist when they need something from you. That's not a relationship worth keeping." My mom looked at me, a new understanding in her eyes. She didn't say anything more. She could see how much I had changed. The old Ethan was kind to a fault. The new Ethan was still kind, but now he had boundaries. That was the price of growing up, and also the reward. Before bed, I stood by my window, looking up at the night sky. A new chapter of my life was about to begin. Whatever came next, the anxious wait for scores, the adventure college, I was ready. I knew that no matter what challenges I faced, I could handle them on my own. I didn't need to lean on anyone, and I would never let anyone use me again. I was just me, Ethan, unbreakable, someone who fought for his dreams and made the hard choices to grow. And for the first time, I was truly living for myself. 2 months later, the day the exam scores were released, I was up at dawn. I logged into the official portal, my heart pounding. When the numbers appeared on the screen, I just stared. Total score, 1580. Verbal, 780. Math, 800. My GPA was a 4. 0 weighted. The score was even better than I had dared to hope. "Mom! Dad!" I yelled, my voice cracking with excitement. They came running into my room. "What is it? Are the scores out?" 1580, I said, pointing at the screen. My mom's eyes instantly filled with tears. "Oh, Ethan, that's incredible." My dad was speechless, just clapping me on the shoulder again and again, a huge grin on his face. With that score, I was ranked first in our school district. MIT wasn't just a possibility anymore. It was a reality. My phone started blowing up with calls and texts from teachers and friends. "Ethan, your score is phenomenal." Mr. Davison's voice boomed over the phone. "You're the school's valedictorian this year." "Thank you, sir. I couldn't have done it without your guidance." "So what's the next step?" "I'm applying to MIT computer science program." "Excellent. With that score, you can write your own ticket anywhere." Over the next few days, admissions officers from MIT and Stanford both reached out. After careful consideration, I accepted the offer from a Massachusetts Institute of Technology for their School of Engineering. My childhood dream was officially coming true. The day I formally submitted my acceptance, I ran into Leo at school. "Ethan, congratulations, man," he said, giving me a high five. "Mitt, that's insane." "Thanks, Leo. How did you do?" "Pretty good. Got into a great state university," he said, beaming. "Hey, I really wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For showing me what it means to be focused, to be responsible for yourself. Seeing you turn things around. It inspired me to get my act together, too." His words meant a lot to me. It turned out that by saving myself, I had also inspired a friend. "We both have bright futures ahead of us, Leo." "Hell yeah. Oh, by the way," he said, lowering his voice, "did you hear about Sophia?" I hesitated. "No, and I don't really want to." "She only got 1100, he said anyway. "Not even enough for a decent state school. I heard she's going to have to go to community college and try to transfer." I was silent for a moment. An 1100. It was a harsh outcome, but it was the outcome of her choices. "Everyone has to live with the consequences of their actions," I said quietly. "Yeah, and honestly, I think you made the right call. If you had kept helping her, you might not have gotten into MIT." He was right. If I hadn't woken up, if I had continued to waste my time and energy propping her up, my future would look very different. Sometimes, saying no is the bravest and most important thing you can do. Sometimes, putting yourself first isn't selfish. It's necessary. A month later, my official acceptance package from MIT arrived. Holding the thick envelope in my hands, I thought about the naive freshman I used to be, so eager to please, so convinced that kindness would always be rewarded. I know now that what truly matters isn't getting everyone's approval, but earning your own self-respect. Not all kindness is returned, and not all effort is valued. Learning to say no, learning to prioritize yourself, That isn't selfishness. It's maturity. The night before I left for Cambridge, my mom helped me pack. Ethan, she said quietly, I want to ask you something. What is it? Do you regret it? How things ended with Sophia? I stopped folding a shirt and thought for a moment. Mom, do you think I should regret it? I don't know. It's just, you two used to be so close. Mom, I said gently, have you ever heard the term sunk cost? She shook her head. It's an investment you've already made that you can't get back. A lot of people keep making bad decisions because they can't let go of the sunk cost. They keep throwing good money after bad. I looked at her. My relationship with Sophia was a sunk cost. I had already invested 3 years. But that wasn't a reason to invest a single day more. She nodded slowly, beginning to understand. I don't regret it, Mom, I said with certainty. Without that experience, I never would have learned to be independent. And if I hadn't made that final break, I wouldn't be going to MIT tomorrow. So, I'm grateful for the lesson, I finished. But I don't miss the teacher. My mom looked at me, her eyes full of love and pride. You've really grown up, Ethan. I had. I had transformed from a people-pleaser into an independent person with principles and boundaries. The process was painful, but the result was worth it. The next day, my parents drove me to the airport. Take care of yourself in Boston, Ethan, my mom said, her voice thick with emotion. I will, Mom. Don't worry. I know how to be independent now. And if you ever run into trouble, my dad added, don't hesitate to call home. I will, Dad, but I think I can handle most of it on my own. Before walking through security, I turned and looked back at them. Then I thought about the city where I had spent the last 18 years. It held my youth, my growth, and my hardest-won lessons. No matter where I went, I would never forget what I learned here. Live for yourself. Fight for your dreams. The plane took off, flying toward Boston, toward my future. A new chapter was beginning at MIT. This time, I would be wiser. I would still help people, but never at my own expense. I would still be kind, but never again foolish. Because I had finally understood the most important truth of all. The best way to help the world is to first make sure you're standing on solid ground.